I am going to rearrange our agenda a little bit. So why don't we go to the bills payable? And so we have fiscal year 21 ClearGov and the Association of Town Finance Committees. Those were in the link, the packet that Deirdre gave us the link to. So the first bill is to ClearGov for $5,500 for the ClearGov software for fiscal year 21.
What's the status of getting, I haven't looked at it in the last couple of months probably, but last time I was on it was probably about 2 months ago, or maybe 3, and it wasn't too up to date. Is that being managed and used and updated?
Craig, this is Carol, the Finance Director. We are in the process of updating the ClearGov. All FY18 and FY19 information is on the site. We just have to put the FY20 information up.
Okay, and it honestly could have been 5 months ago that I looked at it. It's kind of a blur, you know, but
right,
I've lost parts on time.
Right, we were able to in March and April. We were able to load some of the stuff, but we had there was a delay on the side of ClearGov to load the information because of COVID-19. But
yeah.
After we get through all of this severe stuff, we should be back on being able to load 20 and get 21 up and going.
Perfect. I'll make a motion that we approve payment of the bill 5,500. Was that right, Jody?
Can I just ask one more question? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I seem to have lost the video overall. I can see Craig, but that's it. So what they provide for us is they provide the the software behind this, but we have to upload, or you have to upload everything to that in the prescribed format. Do they then take that and clean it? They do anything, or is it just an interface where you're basically, loading the data into their container and they display it in the form that we see it?
You're exactly right. So it has to be downloaded out of our system and then, put in the format that they want it to be in. Then the file is sent to ClearGov, and then it's up to ClearGov to load it. The town accountant reviews it before she gives the go-ahead for them to post it to make sure everything is lined up and works with them. But it's an interface kind of situation.
Okay.
Any other questions on this bill? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize payment to ClearGov for $5,500. Is that the correct amount, Jody? I don't have the price tag.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yep.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve payment of $5,500 to ClearGov for the FY21 year. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Indicate aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Our next bill is to the Association of Town Finance Committees for $180. And I assume that's dues for FY21 as well.
I'll move that we authorize payment for Association of Town Finance Committees for, again, 180, is that? Or
yes.
180.
Right.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve payment to the Association of Town Finance Committees for $180 for the FY21 dues. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, motion carries unanimously. I probably should have introduced that this is the Town of Millis Finance Committee meeting of Wednesday, September 16th. And I am Jody Garzon, the chair. So, you know, at 7:15, I guess I will make that statement. Why don't we go to a discussion of the Enterprise Fund Committee? I know we have Mr. McCaffrey with us here. I don't know if you want to kind of explain to us what this committee is, and then basically how you see it structured.
Certainly, I'll be happy to do that. At a recent meeting, we've had some discussion among the select board of the fact that we now have 3 operating enterprise funds for basically public utility infrastructure, water, sewer, and stormwater. We had a couple of committees. One was the sewer study committee, which did some work around sewer expansion. Another was the drinking water committee, which really hasn't done much lately, but was focusing a little bit on, water quality and those kinds of things. And stormwater, we had no citizen advisory committee. Select board was of the view that similar kinds of concepts apply to each of these enterprises. In other words, they are infrastructure oriented. They're paid for by the users using a user fee. They have financial accountability with respect to these specific purposes. So anyway, we felt that the select board as the water and sewer commissioners would benefit greatly by eliminating the 2 committees and then forming a single committee to deal with the enterprises across the board, water, sewer, and stormwater. And really what we're asking the committee to do is to work on the broader issues such as governance itself, cost allocation methodologies, asset management processes, capacity management, regulatory compliance, the broad range of issues that really need to be addressed as you look at governance overseeing these enterprise funds. And so we felt that we would be best served by setting up a committee of 5 people. We would have a designated member from the select board. We would ask the finance committee to have a designated member as well, representing the finance committee, and then 3 citizens at large. These would constitute the voting members of the committee. The ex officio members to provide support and expertise would include the town administrator, the director of the Department of Public Works, and the health director, since all those issues really intertwine with the management of the enterprises. Now, the responsibility and authority for rate setting and those kinds of things still rests with the select board, but we're looking for a group of individuals to step forward and help us think through some of these issues and advise the board on these critical items. It could range all the way from bylaw development. Again, cost allocation has been an issue. We've done some work already. We'd like to continue that and hopefully gear ourselves toward coming to some kind of resolution for the spring town meeting. And we're hoping to recruit some folks with some expertise and knowledge to serve on the committee. So what we had asked was for the finance committee to consider recommending one of its members to serve on this enterprise committee. And hopefully we'd be able to have that, you make that decision either this meeting or one very shortly so we can work to get this committee up and running.
Thank you. So I understand we have at least one person who is interested in being on the Enterprise Fund. Is that correct?
Well, it was mentioned to me that they're founding this, but they're starting this, and I did express an interest if they were looking for somebody. I have experience with the Drinking Water Committee and a few other areas too.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Kathy.
Kathy McInnes here. I too would wish to be considered for this very important enterprise committee. as Chair McCaffrey remembers, I was instrumental in requesting a review of the DPW staff regarding work assignments. And as a 23-year member of the Planning Board, I became familiar with, among other things, the town's infrastructure as it relates to water and sewer. And I feel I can discuss competently both of those areas, including drainage and sewer requirements and capacity, especially with civil engineers. I feel my on-the-job training ably prepares me to fulfill the requirements necessary for appointment to this important committee. And lastly, during my 3 grateful years as a selectman, I was the select board liaison to the water and sewer committee, and along with Jim McCaffrey, the Board of Selectmen liaison. And I learned a great deal and feel I can continue that, bringing my knowledge to the town regarding this enterprise fund. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm kind of excited that we have 2 members who are interested, whereas usually it's everyone steps back and whoever's still forward gets to be
Honestly,
the one.
if Kathy's desire is and her experience, I was willing to step in, but if she's enthusiastically stepping in, we might only need 1 person.
Okay, well.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I think that sounds great. I'm always excited to appoint someone who's enthusiastic.
Don't get choked up now over that.
Whoa. Having some audio issues.
Craig, if you want it, you can have it. That noise.
No, I'm not making any noise.
I don't know where that was from.
No, I've got no issues with it at all. Quite honestly, it was something I was willing to step up to do. I could probably do an adequate job on it, or an able job on it, but I have other things also going on. So Kathy, if you're enthusiastic, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
So can I have a nomination then from one of our other members?
Nominate Kathy McGinnis as the FinCom representative to the Enterprise Fund Committee.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend Kathy McGinnis as the FinCom rep to the new Enterprise Committee. Any further discussion?
Kathy, you great job.
Great.
Joycey.
You're
All
welcome.
those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, motion carries unanimously. I am hesitant to discuss our committee roles while we still are missing a few members. So I'm gonna table that for now. And with that, I don't think we can vote the payroll signatories.
Well, I think you can, because typically it would be the chairman and vice chairman are signatories. So without,
So we would just vote by position, not necessarily by name.
I think that should be okay. I'm not real sure. If you want to hold off, that's fine too.
We want to make sure you get paid, but we can change it next meeting if we have to also.
Yeah.
Whatever the most.
Well, no, you know what? Then we'll hold off on it because the town administrator actually signs it on behalf of the chairman, or that's what's been happening. So we can hold off, Jody.
Okay. I think we'll just kind of keep things as they are for right now until we can kind of have a full contingent. In particular, I'd like to have the vice chair here before we vote to put his name on things.
He won't mind.
Yeah. So while when it comes to warrant articles, I have no problem appointing people who aren't there. In this case, I'd like to hold off on that. So I'm assuming that I'm just going to continue with some like kind of new business stuff while we wait. We have about 8 minutes before we have kind of our first tri-board meeting. So I'm assuming that it's going to make sense for us to meet on the 30th. But unfortunately, I have a conflict that night. So if the vice chair can manage that one, then I'll call him up to manage that meeting. But I wanted to know the folks who are here on the call with us right now, if everyone can make that, or if, you know, basically if we'll have a quorum.
Wednesday night, that's a Wednesday? Obviously.
That's a Wednesday night.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I can make it too.
Okay, Doug?
Yeah, I'm here. That's not Halloween, is it?
It's not. Wrong month.
Oh, right. I'm looking at my calendar. I'm in October. I'm looking at the calendar. I'm going, huh? What's up with that?
I know I looked at it, but I can't remember what month.
No, I'll be here in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope.
Joyce, can you make
Yep.
that? Okay.
I'm all set too, Madam Chair.
Yes, great, Kathy. And I saw Sean did the thumbs up. So looks like we will have, sorry, a quorum for that meeting. So we'll plan on that. I'm sure we'll have some discussion items that come out of tonight's meeting, as well as, you know, as the warrant firms up further, we'll have discussion of what the likely articles are going to be on there. Any other issues that have come up that we should discuss as a committee?
I'll just mention what I sent the email out on, if it's all right. The Charter Review Committee, I foolishly thought we were going to wrap up last week and put on a suggestion that we change the finance, that we consider this, that we recommend to the selectmen to consider a name change of the Finance Committee to the Warrant Committee, only because I know I've tried to recruit, and I think Jody's tried to recruit, and others have also, and sometimes the name Finance Committee makes people believe they have to have a strong financial background. It's really only about 20 to 30% of what we do. The rest of it is really the other warrant articles. So had I thought of it in enough time in advance, I would have gotten a notification out and questioned everybody, but I saw my opportunity. I thought the door was going to close and Doug was there, and I made a motion and proposed it. If anybody has a problem with it, and I heard back from a couple people, but not everybody. I just want to make you aware that there was no slight meant. It was just an attempt to try to be expedient and get the vote done when I thought that was going to be our last meeting. I was clearly wrong. That's not our last meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen in other communities that that's the nomenclature that they use for the Finance Committee. You know, some towns have it as a Finance Committee, some as a warrant, and I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I agree that Finance Committee does tend to scare off some people, and Warrant Committee, in some respects, we focus more on the finances of all of the warrant articles, but we do discuss each one. So I think it's worthy of discussion.
Yeah. And again, ours is just a recommendation to the selectmen coming out of our committee. It's not a final decision. So the Finance Committee will have one chance to actually, if it makes it through the select board, the Finance Committee will have a vote on whether to recommend it at town meeting. So that can be our discussion point. But at least it puts it out there.
However, we are discussing finances, and I think that changing the name to warrant, I guess I prefer finance. And
Okay.
I'm one that doesn't have a lot of finance background, yet I was willing to get onto the committee because I felt that it was a good reason to, you know, it was a good committee to be on and be involved with, and to be able to guide and help the town with warrants and finance stuff. So I don't know why warrant just, it doesn't sit well with me.
And the reason it came up was I saw it in a lot of other towns that call it that, and many of them had moved to that. from-
Oh, I know. Just because I guess I'm comfortable with it being finance, and I think it kind of implies that we do discuss finances.
Yeah, we still have it, but we don't discuss the town. We don't have a role in managing the town day-to-day finances, as many people think we do. That's
So that's why the one.
and people think that, you know, that they're going to have to work with Carol, which is a lovely person, no complaints. but that's a select board that works with the town finance department. We recommendations on the warrant on, among other things, financial. But I'll argue that appointing the Board of Health representative has absolutely zero to do with finance. But this is a discussion we can have if it makes it through the next hurdle, which is the select board recommending it. So I do understand your position, and I mean, I'm not
that firm against it. I just prefer.
Joyce, are you worried that warrant usually comes before arrest?
Yes.
All right.
Not really.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting more folks on here.
I'm actually gonna scoot out and try to relog back in because I'm having some odd feedback and funky stuff going on here. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, I keep getting a green phone popping up every time you go out.
All right, I'm gonna dip, as they say, and I'll be back.
See ya.
Sounds good. I don't know if the select board wants to call to order, since it looks like you have all your members here.
Quorum.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we do have the members of the select board are here, so we have our separately posted meeting. So I would like to call the meeting of the select board to order. Attending are myself, Mr. Germain, the vice chair, and Ms. Underhill, our clerk. The purpose of our meeting as a select board is this joint meeting between among, I guess is the right term, among the select board, the finance committee, and the school committee. So we are officially in session.
I'm just going to give Denise and Robin just a second to connect, and then we'll get going. Hi, Robin.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm good. Hi.
Yeah, I want to not inundate Deirdre. She's trying to let everyone in. So we'll wait for, folks who are waiting to connect here.
Is Mark on?
It's on, yeah.
Mark,
Okay.
yeah, I believe all the school members are here.
Okay, so then I'm going to call the school committee September 16th meeting to order. Everyone here is present, so it's myself, Carrie Roach, I'm the chair, Robin Briggs, the secretary, Stephen Catalano, Denise Gibbons, and Mark Conroy. And thanks for having us.
So to the chair of the FinCom, I don't know when, will we know when Doug has returned?
He's back, I think.
He's back. Okay.
We still have a quorum, so even without him, so we'll just consider that our meeting is continuing.
Okay.
And we can go right into the tri-board. We're gonna table our remaining kind of 2 council items that we wanted some other of our members to be present for. So I think we're ready to head right into the tri-board meeting.
Great, thank you. Thanks to all for coming. I'll take the lead more as the moderator rather than as anything other than that, so we make sure that people get called on and get the chance to be heard. I want to thank all the members again for attending. This is our first tri-board meeting in the new fiscal year. Comes at a really important time for us as we prepare for the outlook for the rest of this fiscal year, as well as preparation for the fall town meeting in November, which is sooner rather than later, as it turns out, of course. We, in conversations among the boards, we have agreed upon an agenda to follow. Again, our process here is primarily a conversation among the members of these three boards and committees, as well as the, some of the staff that is advising us, including the town administrator, the school folks, the finance director, et cetera. So this is an open meeting. People are, certainly the citizens have the right to be, to listen to it. And, but primarily the conversation is among the board members for purposes of this dialogue this evening. So hopefully everyone has a copy of the agenda. The first item really is the one that is what we hear in the next 10 or 15 minutes is going to have a lot to do with what we are able to talk about and potentially consider, because the most important thing at this stage of the game for fiscal year 21, since we already have a budget, is where do we stand with the critical financial indicators now almost 3 months into the fiscal year. So I would like to ask our finance director. Well, let me just take a step back. We have the good fortune of having both the finance function from the finance director as well as the business support from the school to talk to us a little bit about where we stand across the entire enterprise. So what I'll do is I'll ask Carol to brief the folks on the call here. We've sent out some information in advance, but I think most importantly, we give her the chance to brief us on where we stand, and then to take questions from the members of this tri-board. So, Carol?
Thank you very much. I included in everybody's packet today was a memo that I had sent out to the select board. I'll just quickly read through it and give you a little more commentary on it. The town of Millis's financial position is trending positively for FY 2021 as of today. And that stands as of today. This was given last week. The town's cash flow is strong based on current collections, and the following is contributing to the strong cash flow. Local aid distributions were budgeted at 5% lower than the governor's FY 2021 budget proposal. The actual monthly distributions are being funded at the FY 2020 level, which amounts to a current increase monthly of $19,757. If these distributions remain at these levels based on the DOR guidance, then the full annual increase in local aid is expected to be $237,083 for fiscal 2021. The FY 21 quarter one real estate taxes have a 97% collection rate, which is 1% less than collected for this time last year. The quarter two receipts are not due until November 2nd. So I can only give you the information based on year-over-year quarter one FY 2020. We collected $5,478,120 of the bills. In fiscal year 2021 for quarter one, we've collected $6,285,315. So an increase in real estate Q1 collections of $807,195. That was on, the bill out was an extra $890,452, so we still have a little bit of collections to come through, but as you can tell, that's a significant increase year over year for this quarter. On the local receipts front, the remaining FY 2020 excise taxes are trending higher collections at this time than they were last year. We have a few more. We receive the information from the Registry of Motor Vehicles, and that's how the bills are sent out for motor vehicle excise. Between now and December 31st, we're expecting to have 3 to 4 more commitments to bill. So that will increase what will actually receive in this current year. So far, we've received an additional $85,000 in this year over what we expected from last year. So we're in a good place for motor vehicle. We're in a good place for real estate taxes. We're in a great place for local aid. Our marijuana impact fees for FY 2021 quarter one are $70,058 with a matching local options tax of 3%, bringing in an additional $70,058. So it would be $140,000. Neither one of those items are included in our budget numbers, but those dollars won't be available for use until next year when free cash is certified. Other things to consider for the group is that our new growth is projected to be higher than the budgeted in FY 2021. The actual new growth amount will be available after DOR is certified, probably first or second week in October is what we're hoping for. Free cash will be certified by DOR and the amount would be available in about the same time frame. We're expecting to have all of our information over to DOR so that they can give us the certifications, but because a lot of the DOR staff is still working remotely, there may be a slight delay in us getting our information. Another thing to consider for motor vehicles, I just wanted to make a point for everybody. In the budget for FY 2021, we actually proposed $1,198,000 for motor vehicle. We reduced that amount down to just under $1.1 million, and that was due to, we thought, with COVID, we weren't quite sure what was going to go on. We've actually billed out for 2020 without the additional 3 to 4 commitments, $1.2 million worth of excise tax. Now we expect for FY 2021, with the new growth that we currently have, each new residential property typically brings 1 or 2 new cars into the community. So we should see an increase. We can't gauge exactly how much it will be, but I would expect that we would have an increase in motor vehicle excise tax for FY 2021.
Carol, this is Jim.
Yes.
Could you also just, do you have some information on, the other big item on local receipts, of course, is building permits. Do we have any handle on where we stand on building permits year to date?
Right now, year to date, they're trending what we expected. I think that we'll be seeing a lot more when it comes, there was a little bit of a downtick for people because of COVID-19, but now things are starting to really pick up again. So I would anticipate that our building permits would exceed what we have in the budget for FY 2021.
One other item that I'd like to just clarify a little bit on really is the marijuana receipts for fiscal year 20. In other words, the amount of money that we did receive from the retail marijuana establishment with a combination of HCA payments and local state sales tax.
Right.
So those numbers theoretically are going to be rolled into free cash, which we're going to know about because we did receive those amounts before the close of the fiscal year.
That's correct. So for the HCA, the host community agreement, we received $167,000 in HCA payments in FY 20, and we also received that matching amount for the 3% local option tax, the $167,000. So in the free cash dollar amount, there will be $335,000 of that will be from marijuana.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Jim, the other 140, 70, the other 140 is for next year. That won't be in this year's free cash, correct?
That's right. Well, at this stage, and maybe Carol, you can speak to it too, despite our best efforts to the contrary, DOR has been pretty adamant about not projecting marijuana revenue. Carol, maybe you want to, or Mike, both of you, I know, have been on the phone with them a number of times.
Right. Yeah, right. Because we had no experience with the marijuana impact fees or the local options tax when we were set to budget for FY 2021. We were told not to include anything in the budget. We did include a small amount, which was equal to what we'd received last year. So we do have $40,000 in there, but we weren't allowed to budget any additional monies. And this $140,000, that will roll till next year's free cash.
Okay. Yeah, the $40,000 was actually upfront payments received from marijuana establishments at the time of execution of their HCA.
Right.
Right.
So that we've already received and utilized.
Okay. And then just on that first one, the local aid, I think that's a huge piece that's kind of lost in the details there. I mean, we projected it dropping. Some people are projecting 20%. We agreed on a 5% cut to 10% cut to town hall employees, the library, and the schools. And my question is, since this is obviously not dropping at the magnitude we thought it was going to be by any stretch, I think that if we're being funded at last year's level, it's basically flat, not a drop. Do we have plans to reinstate funding to the town hall employees, add the hours back, and the schools and the library and other areas where there were cuts made at the next town meeting? Is that something we're considering?
Mike, why don't you?
Sure. I mean, from the standpoint of the administration, that's a great point. We have looked at these numbers, the local aid numbers coming in, being guaranteed by the state at the level that we've listed here. It will be the recommendation of the administration that at the latest, we'd like to bring the operations here back to FY20 levels. As well as reinstate the reductions at the library and the funding reductions to the schools from at least for the second half of the year. So say from January 1st to the end of the fiscal year. So we'd be looking to put that into the operational budget adjustments at the fall town meeting. So that is going to be presented to the select board at an upcoming meeting for consideration.
Yeah, because I think that the growth we projected is only like a 0.5 percentage point or growth on the state aid. So for it to be level funded really is no impact to the budgets. And no indication there's a problem with real estate taxes or excise taxes. Obviously, they look like they're doing great. And new growth is doing well. We'll know that in October. So, you know, I think that it's a pretty good picture right now.
I would agree.
That assumption, yeah.
Others who might want to have some comments or questions in particular about, okay, how these numbers are being generated and what the approach might be. Obviously, it's hard to tell in terms of, for example, capital until we have the free cash number.
Right.
We do see some towns that are, have been working on this a little ahead of us, not much, you know, doing the restoration to any cuts they had in the school budgets and the municipal budgets or whatever they can refund, put back in so that they can try to maintain the service level. We haven't had the opportunity to talk among us all until tonight, but I did think it was important that we begin to see what is emerging in terms of the financial picture. Cash flow is strong. The cash on hand is pretty strong as well. We just owed a major payment, I guess the quarterly payment to the GIC for the insurance premium. We had we had plenty of money to do it. We didn't have to. The Commonwealth has come out with various strategies. For example, cities and towns who were unable to make the GIC payment we're allowed to defer it into the next calendar year, which doesn't do away with it. It just defers it if they're experiencing cash flow problems. We did not have to take advantage of that opportunity. So there are other sort of less headlined items that we are also seeing that we feel as though the town is in reasonably good shape. We're to some degree benefiting from the lack of commercial and retail business in town. I know everyone has certainly read about other towns, bigger towns, that have had to make cuts because they had a much bigger revenue stream from restaurants and those kinds of things, parking meters and whatnot. We don't have that. We certainly, meals tax have held up reasonably well, and we're not, obviously as a town and as a community, we'd love to see our restaurants be able to get fully back up and running. But in terms of just strictly the revenue stream, it has not had a really serious impact on the local receipts front. So others with questions, I want to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to sort of make sure they get their questions at least on the table, because obviously we'll all be working on this over the next month or so, coming up with our proposals from the school side and the town side, presenting them to the finance committee. Tonight's meeting really is a heads up as to sort of which way is the wind blowing. So far the wind is blowing in a reasonably favorable way. We do have some things that are not so favorable later on the agenda. But in any event, not with respect to the revenue.
Yeah. A question on that free cash. When we voted the budget, we had a police position that needs to be funded from that marijuana money still. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. And how much was that position? It was like 50 something, 60. I can't remember the amount. It was more than covered by the 300,000. I can't remember the total amount that it was.
It's more around 85,000 plus benefits.
Okay.
I would just one other thing. I mean, in terms of restoration, at least on the municipal side, and I don't want to speak for the schools, if we are able to restore, for example, the full hours to the town hall, et cetera, which we'd certainly like to do if we can, keep in mind that it's only for half the year. So even doing that still resulted in some cost savings because of the restrictions that we put in place, I think prudently, for the first roughly half of the year. So it's not like we're looking to do anything retroactive. I don't think that's going to happen. And we haven't voted on it. My colleagues are here if they'd like to, on the select board, if they'd like to also state their view. But this is we want to get out to folks as quickly as possible. And frankly, from what we're hearing in terms of the finance function, both at the school side and the town side, and I don't want to declare victory too soon, but our effort to close out the year has been pretty, after hard work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, is pretty much on target. We all know that we've had years where that's been delayed, which then delayed the free cash certification. At this point, and Carol, maybe you can speak to that, or Terry, if you're on, how that has gone, so that hopefully we have plenty of, at least a month to know how much money we're going to have in free cash before we get to town meeting.
Right. We've had a pretty impactful year here. So we had a lot of things that have been happening. The biggest thing that we've had is the financial system chart of account conversion. The school has been very supportive of us working with that program and working hard to make sure that they get everything on their chart that they need, and so that we can be up and operational. We did the conversion on the chart of accounts in Munis the middle of September, the middle of July. It was after we closed the books, but before we did the hard close. So we've been working all summer and into this fall to make sure that we have everything up and going and that the charts are going to be sufficient. The school's been really cooperative, so that's been a really good thing and very helpful. We still have a ways to go before we can roll the whole system out for everybody, but I think we're in a really good place.
Thank you. Others with questions for Carol? Not that she's going away, because we can still have some conversation around it.
Jim, it's Denise. Is there a document that lists all of this out? So the school committee got 2 documents, but we don't seem to have this one that has all the different revenue numbers and whatnot.
What we have is a memo at this point.
Okay.
We're stretching to get the information out as quickly as possible, so there's no sort of formal document yet.
That's fine, because I don't think we got the memo, and so we don't have the memo, and we don't have the memo that goes to the level of detail of what Kathy was just talking about. So I just wanted to make sure, or Carol, I'm sorry, if there was something that was out there that we could look at and maybe be better equipped to ask some questions on. But
it's actually on the town's website. If you go to the Finance Committee webpage under meeting materials, all the documents are right there. I can forward it to Robin or Carrie tomorrow if need be. It was part of an email that was sent out yesterday evening.
It just says financial update September 2020.
Yes.
It's just a one-page memo. It doesn't have a lot of, it doesn't have detailed numbers behind it, but it gives she read it, the overview, you know?
Right. I mean,
yeah.
Point well taken, though. The devil is often in the details. This is a directional number, and we thought it was really important to take the temperature of where we stand because at this stage of the game, because it certainly stands at at least in the short run, a better picture than we had when we adopted the budget in June. And we didn't know, and now we know more. And the biggest change, of course, is the local aid number. But the other critical indicators are certainly pointing in the right direction. Because as we all know, we've got development in town, and that is going to promote additional revenue, which was the whole point, really. So I don't want to preclude the conversation. If there's stuff we need to do to, maybe flesh this out a little bit, we can do that, certainly sooner rather than later. But if you look at from the municipal side, I think what we're trying to do is come up with a proposal to restore services. And, we're working off of the $237,000 number, which is the number that is the local aid we didn't expect to get number. And we would expect that, if we were using, we are anxious to utilize a revenue split methodology that will be fair to everybody. But to your point, Denise, unless you have the numbers, it's not enough detail. So we'll get that to you. Anybody else has some comments, questions?
Oh, I wanted to say thank you. I was on mute. I thought I said it, but thank you, Jim.
All right. What we have asked our finance team to do this year in particular is keep the finger on the pulse even more diligently as the months and weeks go by, weeks and months, because you're looking for a turn of events. Obviously, we all are, because we just don't know. And so Carol and the team are working very hard to make sure we have this information in a timely fashion, the critical indicators, the revenue stream. We are very sensitive to, if real estate taxes start to slow, which could be an indicator that of the increasing difficulty for our residents to be able to, pay their taxes. We need to be on top of that. Fact of the matter is that by far the lion's share of real estate tax comes from escrow accounts, because people are paying their mortgage, and at this stage of the game, that is held up pretty well. But we are certainly working very hard to make sure that we keep our eyes on that and to share that information with all of you, because we're all sort of in this uncharted waters together. So, Carol, I wonder if and I want to give people the chance to ask questions, certainly. Can you just say a word or two about the CARES Act?
Jim, before we go there, this is Steve Catalano. I'm on the website. I don't see the document. The document was read. Could whatever email was sent with that document that was just read, could it be resent to this group or at least to the school committee? I mean, it would be really helpful to have the numbers. I didn't take notes. I was assumed the document would be provided, or at a minimum, share the screen and put that document back up so we can see the numbers. It's hard to start talking about discussions about what do we do and restoration and cuts and without actually having the numbers. It's not on the website. If it was sent last night, can we just resend it? Because the committee did not receive it.
Steve, did you get the email from that Deirdre Gilmore had sent? Was that forwarded to you? Because the memo was in the body of the email. It was not sent as a separate document.
I don't believe we got that email.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I want to clarify for a moment, though. Some of the numbers that you heard this evening are not in the memo. The numbers that are in the memo include specific dollar amounts relative to, as you can see on the screen here, relative to the local aid increase, because we do know that number. The real estate tax collections and the excise tax trend are just telling us where we stand vis-a-vis current year collections. It doesn't really generate any money available for appropriation, but it does indicate that, from my perspective anyway, it somewhat mitigates the risk of us deciding as a town to go ahead and utilize the extra state aid on current budgets. Because again, if we felt as though the state aid was increased and our collections were under duress, then we might make a decision that we're going to have to hold on to that money either in stabilization or some other way. All we're trying to do is examine whether or not there's any other indicator which would tell us that we should be more, who should be unwilling to spend the additional state aid. I don't mean to go around and around and around on it, but so we need to give you some more of this. This is the, as you can see it now, this is the core memo. We can supplement it with some of the additional numbers that we talked about. And some of that is, I would say, environmental, if you will, rather than specific, but we're certainly going to try and get these real numbers out to folks as quickly as we can.
I just posted the link on the web, on the chat comments on the side. That'll take you to, I don't know if it's the finance committee or the tri-board or whoever, but that's where the list of all the documents are listed. I think this is the 5th one down, financial update. Yeah, it's a finance committee one because the first 4 items were all finance committee related, but this is the 5th item down, financial update, September 2020. And then we have the summary explanation GTE and the FY20 select board goals. So those last 3 items I think relate to this meeting.
Well, let me just say this gets to, you know, if this group at the end of this meeting decides, look, once we get some more information shared with everybody, if we'd like to reconvene to talk it through, that's fine. I mean, we could certainly do that.
I would strongly suggest that after middle of October, or whenever we get the new growth and the free cash certified, I think it would be a very good time to get together again to discuss strategically and tactically what we're going to do with this extra $237,000, because we have, we implemented cuts to the budget on the anticipation we weren't going to see any extra money, and now we have basically the budget we started with pre-COVID. We don't have any significant cuts at all in front of us, and no indication that we're going to have collection issues or any other problems that that we're facing. And 356,000, I think it was, thousand of free cash funds available. 46,000. I can't remember the number.
From marijuana.
Marijuana. Yeah. Additional free cash. Yeah. Plus whatever normal free cash we'd have.
Yeah. Free cash we've never had before.
Right. new free cash, the best.
Correct. Yeah.
Craig, this is Mark Conroy. Question on the timing. So are we still planning a first week in November town meeting?
Yes, November 7th is the targeted date.
So just kind of backtracking, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
we may have to do something sooner than mid-October.
I agree.
I get we're going to need free cash isn't going to get certified till, first week in October, et cetera. But we probably, if we're getting local aid at the level we're getting and that 237 is a solid number, then we probably need to have that conversation. I mean, you mentioned it. Personally, I would like to look at distributing that, in the same manner it was done, in the same formula we did for the budget, for this current budget, because that's what would have happened had we not budgeted a loss in revenue.
I would support that same formula. I mean, we made the cuts based on the 65, the same ratio. I say we have to send the money that didn't need to be cut back in the same ratio. Anything beyond that can be discussed in another conversation, but I think at the very least, the state aid that came in excess of what we anticipated, where we cut that much money, I think it needs to be put back in the same way it was cut. And quite honestly, if we have a directional number on free cash once it's even pre-certification, if we know where it's going, if it's going to be 800,000, I'm adding the 300 in, or if it's going to be 400,000, we got nothing in the typical. That would be an indicator of what we're looking at for next year. But I think that the state aid money needs to be allocated back at the same way it was cut.
Well, from my point of view, and I'm not speaking for my colleagues, just personally, I'm interested in working collaboratively to come up with the right approach and not reinvent the wheel. Because, literally we've got 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, that's all we have. And maybe the urgency is the best friend we have. It'll allow us to, hopefully deal with this quickly and then present to the town a reasonable solution based upon what we see. The primary purpose of this discussion this evening, from my point of view, is twofold, as I said earlier. One is to make sure we circulate the good news right away, because this is late-breaking information in terms of the state aid. And secondly, to make sure we're examining any other indicators, which would say to us, where we would, frankly say to ourselves, the 237 should be put in stabilization because of the threats of what's coming down the pipe. I think we all have to ask that question. But from my point of view, again, just personally, the other indicators are reasonably strong. So I don't feel at this stage of the game that we need to necessarily take any of that additional aid and save it for the rainy day. That's just very preliminary conversation. And as I said, Select Board we just got this information 2 days ago, so we haven't really had the opportunity to go through it either.
Yeah. And I'd agree with you. I think that I'm even a little bit more enthusiastic with the other indicators. I mean, new growth is going to be significantly higher, it looks like. And we know that free cash is going to be probably, I'm going to guess, significantly better because of this brand new, never before seen free cash number. So if you typically get 400, you add another 330 on top of that, or 335 on top of that. So I think that we don't have anything, and I'm not going to say spend that money because we don't know what it is yet, but I don't think there's anything that indicates we're looking at a problem. And we know that we've got 230 whatever thousand coming back from the state that we weren't counting on, that's guaranteed. So I think reallocating the funds back the way we cut them is the prudent way to go. And the sooner we can make that decision and get that out so everybody can start planning, I think the better.
Yeah, I would also support doing that, given all of the new information that's come out. In addition to, and again, I know I'm getting ahead of the game here because we can't count this money, but if the first quarter of 2021 marijuana revenue is stable throughout the year, then this time next year, we'd be looking at another $560,000, I believe, of money which we can't currently count or use in our budget, but that's money that's flowing in, that's cash that's coming in, and that will ultimately flow into free cash next fall.
Yeah, and Doug, that was only a half of a quarter too, that $70,000. That was a special quarter, but you know, that was an artificially low number. So I think your 540 is probably a fairly safe estimate. Not to spend. I'm not saying that's money that we have in pocket, but if you're doing financial planning, sometimes you have to make assumptions. And I think that you've got a very safe, conservative number there at 540.
The 70,000 was the lowest of the 3 quarters that we've received money, and it wasn't because of anything other than the retail store was closed.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we like to be conservative, so I just took that low number.
No, I'm agreeing with you. That was a very conservative number. I'm not saying to go higher than that, but I think your point is well taken.
Well, maybe then I could ask Carol and Mike or whomever, just quickly on the CARES Act. And I know that we'd like to hear a little bit also, because the CARES Act has a big impact on the schools as well, so.
Right. So on the CARES Act, so we received $729,000 from the state of Massachusetts as part of the CARES Act. It was a prepayment for us to use. Now, it doesn't mean that we're entitled to 100% of that money if we can't provide that it's 100% COVID mitigation related. As of today, we've spent $97,587 of the $729,000. One issue came up just recently from the school for a piece of equipment to improve the HVAC system for $99,000. I reached out to the state person that I deal with to make sure it is COVID related. It would be considered COVID related and fundable. Late this afternoon, he responded back and said, yes, that would fall under the CARES Act. Each municipality can have building modifications with a cumulative cost of $150,000 per municipality. So that would, we'd still have $50,000 left to, if we had to renovate some other area of the town, that we could apply towards the CARES Act. Not that we have to apply it toward the CARES Act. A week from Friday, we have to make our first submission of the expenses that we have used the CARES Act money for. It has to be into the state by 4 p.m. For the March through June expenses that we paid out. And then in October 25th, we have to do the same thing for the July through September 30th time frame. Again, this money only goes until December 31st or until the president declares the emergency over.
I've got a question on that particular project. We discussed it last night at the Capital Planning Committee meeting, and I'm wondering if school committee could confirm if that's a study or is it equipment?
I can speak to that. It is, we've already funded a study, well, 2 studies. There was a large study, the $100,000 study of the infrastructure, HVAC, roof, and electrical. The school committee then approved an engineering study for additional information that we needed on airflow, because the original study didn't provide that. It was more for replacement of the mechanical systems. So currently this week, the engineering study is wrapping up, and they will make recommendations for the middle high school to increase airflow, and if there are things we can do with the system we have currently in place to increase airflow, which is an important part of making the air inside the building as healthy as can be, then we will get those recommendations. And we, school committee had approved a warrant article as a placeholder. We don't have the details on it yet, but the with Carol's news today that it was approved as a an allowable expense under the CARES Act, then it does not need to be a warrant article. We do not have the cost detail estimates yet, but we hope to have those by next week in written form. Preliminarily, the engineering consultant took a look at everything in the middle high school and is making recommendations as to what might be able to be accomplished.
Thanks, Nancy. Is it safe to say that it's really just airflow? It's not filtration or some type of other tertiary system, ozone or ultraviolet light or whatever?
I do not believe ultraviolet light or ozone is part of it, but filtration is part of what they're looking at. Right now, we know we're only able to accommodate a certain level of MERV filters. I think it's MERV 8. And so one of the things they're looking at is whether the motors in our system could actually be adjusted or somehow accommodate a higher level of filtration.
Okay. And that kind of brings me to my next question is it safe to say that that wouldn't be needed at the new Clyde Brown, or is the new Clyde Brown a candidate for a same upgrade or retrofit?
No, all of the systems at Clyde Brown are very robust in terms of providing strong intake of outside air and moving it through the building. It's also adjustable to adjust the pressure, so it is not needed at Clyde Brown.
Thank you.
Okay, we have an item here on the agenda which is intended to allow the schools, to the extent you'd like to speak to us about either other CARES Act issues or financial matters that are creating opportunities or challenges for the schools. We didn't, on the municipal side, we didn't talk about a couple of items like revolving funds and whatnot. In our side, for example, we have a potential issue here with the rec department, unable to run as many programs, although they've run quite a few. Ideas around, we have to try to maintain the infrastructure there, even if hopefully there's a slight or somewhat of a decline in user fees because of COVID. But I don't know if on the school side there are other issues that you folks would like to share with all of us tonight, or anything else you'd like to just put on the table.
I can do a quick update of our CARES grant. We did receive from the Department of Education about $244,000 in CARES grant funding that we have utilized for PPE, furniture, some personnel that are needed to provide more coverage for remote and hybrid learning, equipment supplies, air purifiers. We did a bid and are purchasing air purifiers in the middle high school 4 rooms for the interim and also perhaps to be used all year long. And then we have a very small grant, $43,000 in additional funding that will be used for summer remediation next year to target instruction at students who have academic gaps because of all of this disruption to their learning. So that's the Department of Education grant. The town grant, we had applied for about 442,000 of that amount that Carol had mentioned, but the state disallowed 173,000, I believe, or so in personnel costs. So much of our summer work for cleaning, disinfecting, planning, training, everything that was done over the summer in preparation that we feel was appropriate to apply for CARES Act money, the state disallowed because they were, many of the people were salaried versus hourly. But we are still awaiting, I think, word on telework capacity, software, some hardware, more PPE, sanitizing equipment, and signage. So we have also the furniture. That was an important piece of it. Furniture, we had to replace a lot of our group work tables with individual desks now. So furniture and other equipment. And so it's been, you know, we've been working with Carol on that. And I apologize that Terry Wiggin, he's been ill for a couple of days and is not able to speak to this more in detail, but I did talk to him today and try to pull together that summary. In terms of challenges, I think we are in really good shape as a district, have done a lot of great work, and a lot of people have worked obviously throughout the summer, not taking any time off, and a lot of great work has been done. So there's, you know, the procedures and protocols and training and things that we've done to get to a very good place for the schools to reopen, today being the first day for remote learning for the students. And, but the challenge is personnel, because every district in our area and across the state are really desperate for personnel. We haven't had a lot of retirements or resignations, but the nature of remote and hybrid learning is that we need more hands on deck. And we need to plan for the possibility of people needing to quarantine. So that's our challenge right now, is finding the people to fill the positions that we need to be able to, you know, we may be going from remote to hybrid back to remote a couple of different times. Ideally, we'd like to see everybody full in person at some point. But we've set up schedules that we can move from one model to the other. But the personnel piece is, from my perspective, our biggest challenge.
Great, thank you. Can I just ask a question about this disallowance of, you know, employee cost? Is there any methodology to appeal it? Or I know it's sometimes chasing windmills, but it just sounds absurd. But
well, Carol, I think, can speak to that. She's been great as our liaison to the state and has the more contact with the person at the state level in charge of examining those costs.
So the decision is that if a person is in your budget as a regular, normal budgetary person, then it's not, you're not allowed to get COVID reimbursement for that person. In particular, for anybody that's a salaried position, there is no COVID reimbursement for that. If you, I think there was an example given that if they took on a different responsibility or something like that, totally, it might be that you might be able to get a reimbursement for it. But for right now, it's pretty difficult. It has to be first responders and anybody that would be quarantined as a first responder. You can get reimbursement for that. You can get reimbursement for a replacement for the person who's on quarantine as a first responder. But it's really difficult to just get reimbursement for any employees that would typically be in your budget, that were already included in your budget.
All right. Well, okay, Nancy, thank you so much, because that's really a good update. I'm trying to be mindful of our timetable here. My understanding is my colleagues from the FinCom are notoriously on time, so I'm going to try to keep to the timetable.
Yeah.
And maybe I could ask Mr. Gazinski to talk a little bit about updating folks on the town meeting planning, the warrant articles, and maybe have some, what I would hope, some high-level conversation around expense control to see if there's ways that we should all be thinking about managing our expenses to the extent possible in this period. So, Mr. Gazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe everyone here attended the spring annual town meeting in June. Very shortly after that, we did a debrief from that meeting on what went well, what didn't go as well as we expected, and how we could improve on that for the next town meeting, knowing that we very likely would still be in a condition where we'd have to take special action in regards to holding the next town meeting. With that in mind, we've held a couple planning meetings with a group of town officials to try to map out the fall town meeting. And we also had a site walk with some of those officials, the town moderator, town clerk, election staff, the public safety officials, as well as the facilities manager for the schools, Mr. Engler, really trying to work out how to move forward with the next town meeting. We've also been in contact with the town's Board of Health and the health director in regards to issues of public safety. The Board of Health has strongly recommended to the select board that the fall town meeting be held in an outdoor venue. So that's where we're looking at for a fall town meeting. We did look at several locations for possible outside fall town meeting. And it looks like the best location, as we can see at this time, is the high school parking lot, right outside the high school gymnasium doors. I think that the citizens are familiar with that location, and that location has a lot of benefits as far as sight lines, parking, able to secure the area, and so forth. We are recommending that the town meeting be held, because of light and weather concerns and the temperature, that it be held on a weekend. So we're recommending it be held on Saturday, November 7th at noontime, with a rain date to be the next day, Sunday, November 8th at noon. So that's where we are with as far as planning. We're going to have a few more planning meetings in regards to this to get all the fine details lined up. I know at the Springtown meeting we had an outside firm do the audio. We plan on doing that as well in the fall, and also whatever outside companies we need to assist us, we will certainly bring those in. And most of these costs will be able to be paid for through the COVID-19 CARES Act fund. So it should not be a burden on the town's budget. And any questions on the location and timing of the fall town meeting before I start talking about potential articles?
Mike, quick question, just to make sure I heard that right. Sorry, it's Mark Conroy. Did you say in the parking lot of the high school?
That's correct.
So
outside.
Okay, so
outside in the parking lot.
Yeah. So where would people park?
Well, it wouldn't take up the whole parking lot. It would only take up a portion of the parking lot. And we did look. There's additional parking on that side of the building. There's parking on the other side of the building. And speaking with the chief of police, he did believe there was ample parking to accommodate all those who wish to attend the meeting. There's also parking along that the access roadway to the school. So he felt that there was ample parking there for that.
Right. So maybe the parking lot, the regular parking lot that people most use right now is where we're talking about putting it, not or is it on the back parking lot, like over by the volleyball court?
It's on the parking lot just outside the gymnasium doors.
Oh, okay. So it is the one that most people park at and would think about. Okay.
Correct. And we do have plans to block off that section for safety. We certainly could park trucks along there and other barriers to make sure that area of seating is safe. There's plenty of area there also to have separate areas for non-voters as well as voters who do not wish to wear a face mask. So we do feel there's ample space there.
Okay, and I'm sure you guys are already doing this, so I'll just throw it out there. I just make sure that Chuck Grant, the athletic director, is involved, because I know one change this year is the high school soccer games are being played on Saturdays and Sundays this year, not during the week, and that's one of the final weekends. So just coordinating timing would be good.
Sure, we'll definitely be in contact with them. I'll be in contact through the school administration, and we can certainly make sure that we're sharing information so we know the different timing and so forth, so we can avoid any conflicts.
Great, thanks.
Yep. So moving on.
Before you leave, maybe you just want to say a word or two. Again, there were several venues reviewed.
Yes.
And so there are other options. I mean, if we find there's a insurmountable conflict, there are other options. It's just that this one, when you combine the familiarity plus the issue of accessibility for those, not simply the disabled, but folks who maybe have a hard time getting around, this is a pretty stable area. And you're not planning on closing the entire parking lot. That wasn't what I saw anyway. Is that right?
That's correct. We're only closing that strip along that end of the building that leads out from those doors. So the rest of that parking lot will be open for parking. And then there's parking again on the other side of the building as well as on the access road. Certainly enough parking, I would think, to accommodate those that have any difficulty of walking any distance. We can certainly set up a temporary handicap parking area right near the entrance to where we're going to be having folks come in and register for the meeting. So we should be able to manage all of that. But we will have probably a couple of more planning meetings. And I know I've been inviting Mr. Engler to the meetings, and he's been attending, and I will certainly he will certainly be invited to the couple more meetings we'll need to have before we finalize everything for the meeting.
Well, I guess but Mark's comment really is also make sure the athletic director is clued in, because if
yes, absolutely. I'll be making sure to convey the information over, and we'll make sure that If there does appear to be any conflicts, we'll make adjustments to make it work.
I mean, it's fair to say, I think, that the public health issue, is compounded in this fall, by the flu and the COVID. So there seems to be additional concern from the public health point of view about holding anything indoors. So.
Correct. And the main concern outdoors, or my main concern at this point is mostly the weather. Something we can't control. So that's why we're going to have to keep a close eye on the weather as we approach that date, and make sure to have backup plans in place should it look like the weather will not cooperate. For either that Saturday or the whole weekend, we'd have to keep an eye on that. But we certainly have plenty of time to make sure we can coordinate with any possible conflicts with either the sports program or with any other town events. We'll make sure we're in touch with all those folks.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
And I loathe to debate anything COVID because nobody really knows, but I am asking whether or not the decision to hold this outside has already been made, or is that a fallback in the event that conditions do get worse for regular flu, seasonal flu, compounded with COVID? And the reason I bring that up is because the school board and everybody has made the decision to look at a hybrid model and bringing kids into school in November. And this almost puts the cart in front of the horse, in the sense that we're making a decision now that says that we can't have a town meeting in a gym, taking the same precautions that we took in June, yet we're going to consider putting in October, we're going to consider bringing kids back to school, which should happen. I don't know what the timing is, but you're almost tainting that decision or predetermining it and calling that decision into question by saying, hey, we can't have a town meeting inside. It's not safe. Yet we're going to bring the kids potentially into the same building.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to speak to all the health aspects of that. It's not my expertise, but I would say that, there is a difference between having 12 or 14 kids and children in a classroom and trying to separate them by 6 feet, 7 feet. We simply do not have any spaces within the community that could safely seat 200 plus people in a room for 2 to 3 hours. So I think there's always the opportunity to, if there was a major shift in COVID and the recommendation from the Board of Health changed, there'd always be the possibility to have some sort of move the meeting through a short delay, if it looks like that would be possible, and or weather conditions make it simply impossible to hold it outside. But the more difficult option, obviously, is to have it outside. So that's why we're doing all that planning now, planning on that. And then, if conditions change, I don't expect the select board to finalize the warrant and sign it probably until their meeting of October 5th. So we certainly have that amount of time. I have been advised by the Board of Health that they are expecting actually an uptick in COVID-19 over the next 2 to 3 months, which I think is in line with a lot of the national experts are expecting because of the change in seasons and the fact that a lot of these functions are beginning to occur again across the country. But I suppose there's always a chance to move it if conditions warrant that. So short of asking the Board of Health to opine on that, that's about as far as I can take it at this point.
Would you like me to opine? The specific limitation is the gym can hold 120 people within COVID distancing. So we would have to limit the town meeting to 120 people.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing fall town meeting overly jam-packed in the past few years. I wonder whether or not we'd have many more than 100 people. I seem to recall fall town meetings with about that number. We have counts going back.
Well, we did move things out from the Springtown meeting. So the Springtown meeting was the warrant was intentionally adjusted so that, you know, anything that could be considered controversial that there would be a large showing for was not there. Unfortunately, COVID's not gone and it's not necessarily better. So there's still business that needs to be conducted. So some of that stuff is expected to be included on the fall town warrant, which may bring more people out.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to go through the rest of the actual articles that are under consideration?
Yeah, I mean, just to respond to the question, is the decision final? Well, it's not final until it's final. I mean, it's still a work in progress. The issue of the COVID threat, you know, is something that we're trying to, you know, we dealt with it in the spring in a way, and the strategy was a little different. The conditions have changed somewhat. And, you know, all of us know that some of this restrictions and whatnot are head scratching, because people will say, well, wait a minute, they're opening movie theaters. How come we can't have a town meeting? Well, we're just trying to do the best we can. I think it's pretty safe to say that we're reasonably well committed to a Saturday meeting, probably the 7th or 8th, Saturday or Sunday. So that in and of itself is a dramatic change for this town, or our town. Hopefully that'll be something that the people will support. And the time and effort and energy to plan for something like this is much more than you might think. So we have to make a decision reasonably soon to determine whether we're going to be inside or outside. The only saving grace, I suppose, is that in June, you know, in a lot of ways, we had a couple of days left in the fiscal year before we had to make our decisions. We have more flexibility in November. You know, if we have some reason to delay it a week or two, we can do that. Except then we run the holidays and whatnot. So the reason for bringing it up was not to tell you what has been decided. It's to tell you what the thinking is. But we will have to decide as a board where we want to do this, working with the moderator and certainly folks in the FinCom and whatnot. So we'll have it again on our agenda as a select board, and we invite people to comment on it at that point in time, because we will have to decide what the location will be. Yeah, maybe we can, Mike, maybe we can turn a little bit to a preview of what we're, at this stage of the game, the warrant has closed, and this is what is on the agenda at this point. But again, it's a little bit of a moving target. So anyway, just give people an overview. I think we have some warrant articles that are already proposed, and maybe we can just go over them.
Certainly. So the articles that are we currently have before the select board for consideration for the fall town meeting is in general order based on historical precedent. The first one is the unpaid bills. Again, pretty straightforward. The next one would be any adjustments to the fiscal year 21 operational budget. I think we discussed some of those earlier in regards to the restoration of funds back to the municipal and school departments you know, in light of the state aid numbers and other revenue projections. The next item is the capital item, capital project item. Actually, the capital planning committee met just last night. They did discuss a number of items. I'll just mention some of the items that were discussed for possible inclusion at the fall town meeting. I know the capital planning committee is meeting again next week to continue those discussions. But some of the items before them are a new police cruiser, fire turnout gear, 14 sets of gear, fire SCBA bottles, 12 bottles, a DPW pickup truck, a DPW dump truck, and an I&I study. And they had talked a little bit about the school HVAC initiative, but that looks like that'll be handled by the CARES Act. Essentially, those are the items that were discussed at this point. And we'll have some detailed information on that sent out within the next, I'd say, week and a half on regards to that article.
Mike, I want to point out that the Capital Planning Committee has scheduled 2 meetings before the end of September to make sure that we get the deliberation done at that committee and share the information with the select board, the school committee, and the finance committee.
Yes, I think they're shooting. Yeah, they have a meeting scheduled for next week and then the week after. So they'll have those meetings wrapped up and their recommendation prepared prior to the select board's meeting on October 5th. So that's it for the capital.
Question.
Yes.
I'm curious if someone would like to comment as to whether the school HVAC project, not the study, but the actual high dollar value capital improvement project is that being contemplated as being on this warrant or some other time in the future?
I don't think it was our intent to have it on this warrant. I think it was our intent to have it, we've got our hands full with COVID right now. We wanted to get you guys the report because we just had it so you could see the magnitude of the ask that's coming. But we can't kick the can much further. So it's coming, it needs to be done soon.
Thank you.
Can I just give you one update? We just checked with Chuck. There are games, both those Saturday, 2 games Saturday, one game Sunday, all home that weekend. So we'll have to figure that out. There's an 11 o'clock game and a 1 o'clock game on Saturday and a 1 o'clock game on Sunday, all playing at home.
Okay, we'll contact him to talk about the logistics of that. So the next article.
If for no other reason, this is the value of tonight's meeting. Thank you.
The next item is for additional funding for the DPW building project. I don't know if any members of the PBC want to discuss that this evening.
Mike, can you go through the other items and then we'll circle back? I've asked Craig and Aaron if they'd like to just bring people up to date on that one.
Very good. The next item is contemplation of a wage and salary study. There has not been a salary study of the positions at the Veterans Memorial Building in probably over a decade. And I know the select board had some discussions with the SEIU union in regards to that. And it's something that will be put before the board for discussion on whether or not, and I know those negotiations with the union are coming up later in the winter. So it's something for discussion of the board to see if that's something that's ready to go before the town meeting this fall. Another item which came up at the town meeting back in June was tree cutting and tree maintenance to see if the town would consider additional funding in that area to help with the maintenance of dangerous trees in the community. So that's something that, again, the board would be discussing at the next meeting for consideration. Another item is a change to the general bylaws for the date of the spring annual town meeting. That was contemplated to be on the warrant for this past spring, but was moved to the fall town meeting in light of the COVID concerns and trying to keep controversial or items of great interest from being on the warrant. I'm also.
But that proposal is to flip the order.
That's correct. So the annual.
Before the election.
Correct. So currently the annual town meeting, as everyone knows, is right after the election. This would move the annual town meeting to just before the annual election.
Which basically has the existing administration responsible for the town meeting. This was an item that has been discussed a number of times. And I believe that this is pretty much the usual, that our process is a little unusual.
Yes, we're in the minority on that.
Okay.
The next item is some contemplated zoning changes by the planning board. I have not received anything formal from the planning board other than a notification that they've asked for a space for an article for zoning changes, and I expect to have some information on that next week. But that a place has been set aside for that. Another item which again had been delayed or postponed from the Springtown meeting was the contemplation of sewer bylaw changes. Again, that may or may not be on the warrant this fall, but something just for the select board will be discussing at the next meeting to determining when and by what form that'll come before the voters. And the last item, again, it's unknown right now, but I know I did receive an email from the chair of the Charter Review Committee just asking about the town meeting process in regards to any charter changes. But again, the select board hasn't received anything formally back from the Charter Review Committee as of this time. So it's unknown whether anything would be before the board for consideration at the fall town meeting at this point. So that's everything I currently have on the draft list. And be happy to try to answer any questions in regards to those. But right now, again, some of those are still in a form that's not concrete at this point to move forward. So.
Okay, just to make sure we flush this out, in terms of the article related to the DPW project, I'd like to ask Craig, who's a member of the PBC, and Aaron, who attended the meeting last night, to sort of brief this group on what the current situation is.
Okay, we met last night, geez. Okay, and we received our bids back on the project, and we received about 8 bids back. Good news is 3 of the bids are very tightly grouped. The bad news is those 3 bids, the 3 lowest bids, are all tightly grouped at about 580,000 over the amount we've allocated. So we are short by at least $568,000 to be able to do the project. The reason for that, this is over our estimate. This is dramatically over what we estimated, the estimators came back with. There's really 2 reasons that it's overpriced. The unit price for subsoil, for subsurface work is a number you carry in case you have to do boulder removal or if there's contaminated soil or anything like that, but you have to carry it in the budget. And that's $330,000 over our estimate. And the roof is about $170,000. Now the roof could be trimmed back to a different style roof that would probably bring that line in closer to budget, but that would still leave us dramatically over budget. There's no way to trim this subsoil work because, you know, if you do hit contaminants, as we have done, or you hit a large boulder, or you hit groundwater, as we have done, the groundwater is the library, the contamination was the police station. You want to have enough money in your budget to cover this so you don't run short. So really there's no way to scale back the project easily. We've already done as much there's no way to scale back the project. We've already done as much value engineering as we can possibly do on the project. We've made cuts, we've made changes, we've made design changes. And now we're at the point where the only way to bring this project in is to go to town meeting and ask for additional money. It's not necessarily something that we want to do, but there is no way to fund this project without going to town meeting to bring in this additional request of funds. And since the building is in deplorable condition and the staff that working there, it's not OSHA, I forget the group that Jim said visits, but we're not up to a standard that would allow that our employees should continue working in. So we do have to ask for an additional at least 568,000. We're thinking we round up a bit, not dramatically more than that, but we don't want to bring it in at 568 request and have it be a 590,000, overage. The only other piece of good news about it is the contractor who had the low bid has agreed to hold his price, and all of the filed sub-bidders have agreed to hold their price till after the November town meeting. They don't have to do that. It's only a 30-day bid, but they've all agreed that they'll hold the price until after we meet in November so that we can take a town meeting vote to see if this project can continue. That's the update. I'll be glad to answer any questions about it, but that's the short answer.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
One of the questions I might have is, if we don't do this, I believe we're subject to some potential penalties that could be levied on us. So regardless of whether we move forward or not, there are going to be some costs, whether we like it or not. Has anyone looked at what those potential costs might be and consider them as an offset and say, look, we've made an obligation first to the union. We're going to get them out of the building and into facilities, but we also have potential costs associated with not doing this.
Yeah, prior to your meeting in 2 weeks, we're going to have some more information on this. We are getting back a soil contamination review piece, and that's not going to change the fact that the bid still has $330,000 of soil contamination in it. But it'll let us know if we believe that's adequate. So, because that's a per unit cost. But the more important point is Jim is going to get the cost of trailer rentals, all the options that we would have to put in place if we don't go ahead with this project. And really there are a couple other options that could be done. We could build the truck wash, the truck repair station and wash, and convert the DPW building to just the storage building, take the staff out of it. But that's going to incur a rental on trailers for staff, and Jim's going to get us that number prior to your meeting in 2 weeks. We did not have it last night when we met, but we will have that in 2 weeks, and that'll give you the full picture. And then we can, and then you and the PVC can decide whether we go to town meeting and ask for $568,000 more, whether we go to town meeting and ask for the project to be changed to eliminate the staff building and absorb the trailers as an operational cost, or whatever the best call is after we get the final piece of data. But we thought it was important to bring forward what we had at this point. When the bids came in on September 9th, it looks like, that's why we met so quickly just a couple days ago.
Thank you. No, I just want to make sure that we all understand it's not just, oh, well, we don't do certain things. There are going to be costs no matter what. And whether you want to call them offsets or anything, we need to understand what those are.
And I think that that's what Jim was saying at our meeting too, that we had 18 months to 2 years to respond to these findings. And our solution was we're going to build a new building and get the staff out of it. And that satisfied the findings that were brought forward by this workplace advisory group that evaluates this site. If we can't do that, that is going to cause all kinds of problems for us.
Thank you very much.
And just that $568,000, the proposal would be to divide it 3 ways, just as we did the original costs: sewer, water, and operating funds. So it's not 568 straight out of operating. And that 568 could very well turn into a slightly higher number as you meet and discuss it and decide how prudent you want to be, how conservative you want to be with the funds. And I think that ground contamination study will help inform that, because if it comes back clean, I think the 330 is a fair price. If it comes back dirty, then that's a broader conversation. We don't see any reason that it would, because we've had some preliminary work done, but you never know. And the other point is, if there's boulders and other things that aren't going to show up on that ground, contamination study, because they're not contaminants, there's still cost associated with removing and relocating those.
Anybody else have any questions? The point really is to make sure that since we had the information considered and discussed at the PBC last night, wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of it tonight, not because we've reached a conclusion, but because it does have a significant, it becomes a significant item at the town meeting. Nobody likes to go back and ask for more money for a project. And everybody on these committees is more than familiar with trying to estimate and then trying to get it right and then finding that it isn't quite right and therefore going back for additional funding. So the first order of business for the select board will be to determine what to propose, working with our PBC, and obviously it'll be coming back to the finance committee for its deliberation as well. But important for you to know where we stand at this point in time. And it's certainly not the news we had hoped for in terms of competitive bids. But apparently this is a somewhat volatile construction era. And we seem to have had a bit of a shortfall here. So, yeah. And this is not to be treated anything other than seriously, considered by the town. And I appreciate, as always, the hard work from the PBC of considering these issues and trying to get a recommendation together that makes sense.
And I do want to point out, this is the first project that we will have to go back and ask for money that's directly project related. The police station ground contamination was a different situation. It was something that was found during excavation that was beyond the scope of the project. But this is the first time with the library, the police station, the fire station, the Clyde Brown School, and even going all the way back to the town hall, that we've had to renovation. We've had to ask for additional money to finish a project or to start a project. So there's a pretty good track record. This one obviously did not pan out, but the last several have been on budget or under. I think we'll have some good news to report on that as we get a little bit further along too on the school budget and the school finance construction cost.
Okay, great.
Quick question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Craig, just to clarify, the added cost for soil for excavation is really just the contractors, multiple contractors essentially included a contingency in the event that they expect to find difficult digging or contamination. Not that they have, not that that surface, or excuse me, that soil studies showed that it exists, but they're including a contingency in the event that they do find it.
Right, and it's a per unit cost. It says, and I don't have the quotes in front of me, but for every cubic, or for every ton of soil you have to move around, they charge you X dollars to remove it from site and dispose of it accordingly. So it could be, I mean, and as we talked about, that number, that 330,000 contingency they have in their unit cost pricing could be zero. It could be 500,000. 330 is the number they think is reasonable. Realistically, it won't be zero. It probably won't be 330. It'll probably be less than that, but you can't go into a contract. So you're going to sign agreeing to pay them that money should they find it and not have the money to cover it. So it's just prudent to fully fund the project and hope that they don't find any contamination, hope that they don't have a subsoil issue, and then we just don't spend that last $330,000 or some portion thereof.
So it is a separate line item on their contract in terms of contaminated soil.
Yep, it's what they call unit cost pricing. So for every unit they find, for every boulder over a certain size that they have to move, there's a cost.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mike, I cut you off. I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to make sure we covered this issue because it's the one surprise that, we didn't anticipate 2 days ago when we were meeting to put the agenda together. Anything else you'd like to sort of wrap up in terms of the warrant? We had an item here about, expense control, what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, and just make sure everyone is aware, and was discussed the other night, but, you know, we had some unfortunate news with the bids on the project, but we have some other good news in that the state is going to be carrying all the costs for the Dover Road Bridge, which we expect to be well over $2 million. That is no longer on our books as a liability for the town moving forward. So wanted to temper that with some good news, make sure everyone was aware of that as well. So I know we're a little behind schedule, so I'll keep it very brief. That's everything I have in regards to the warrant articles and town meeting planning. Just to talk really briefly in a high level about the expense control guidelines, just to convey that obviously with the current budget situation and the cuts that had to be made, we are keeping a very tight control over our expenses here. We're also really trying to examine you know, what costs we can try to allocate to the CARES Act. And certainly we have to be, you know, cognizant that they can always deny certain costs, applications, but we are trying to kind of think outside the box and help us prepare, not just now, but down the road with those funds as much as possible. You know, I will say that the department heads have been very good with that. And I think we're, you know, with the good news talked about earlier this evening with the state aid and other revenues, I think it is leading us into a positive direction into the second half of the year. Although, you know, we're not totally out of the woods yet. We do have to, you know, hopefully the vaccine will come through soon and this will start to clear up and it'll bring things back to what we consider a relative normal. Just wanted to make sure everyone knew that we were, you know, keeping a tight line on those expenses and just our overall spending. So with that, I'll close it there so we can try to get back on track for the time frame here.
Anyone else have any questions for the town administrator that you'd like to address? Okay, well, the next two items really were sort of bigger picture, broader items, just to have some dialogue about sort of overarching policy and those kinds of things. Some of this we've already talked about, of course, about the issues impacting FY21, because we've already been over a lot of that. I just thought it would be helpful for my colleagues in the finance committee and the school committee, at least to get a sense from the select board as to what we've identified as our goals for the coming year, which we adopted 2 weeks ago. And some of them are not budget oriented, so I won't spend time on those. We did share them. I think that the material was circulated by Deirdre. But I guess what I wanted to talk about a little bit in terms of the bigger picture, if you will. This is sort of, yeah, thank you very much. These are the select board goals. What it has potential budgetary impact. One of the issues, of course, is the review and continuing analysis of the senior services model that we have in Millis. As many of you know, we're doing a study on the Alternative Senior Center project. Part of what is going on there, of course, is the effort to define what senior services, not only the ones we're delivering, but what we'd like to deliver. Because that, from a programming point of view, that helps inform the deliberation over what kind of building you want, where you want to have it, what its facility should look like. So we're working on that. Again, in many ways, the most active committee in town is the PBC, Permanent Building Committee, is working on that one as well. We obviously, as select board, have some oversight authority with respect to the projects, the construction projects. We've talked about the DPW facility. We are working on the study around the Lansing Millis building for repurposing that building. So that, in addition to hopefully finalizing our oversight role and the school's oversight role on the completion of the Clyde Brown project. We've already talked about water, sewer, and stormwater enterprise governance and what we're trying to accomplish there. One of the items that I think that has potential discussion for the budget process for FY22 is our interest as a board, and I think general interest among those of us who are responsible for the town governance, is to further exploration of what services we're providing through on the municipal side and the school side, which might benefit from some shared service. The one thing we've accomplished over the last couple of years is the consolidation of the finance function, which we've seen some of the benefit of that tonight, which has enabled us to do a much better job of coordinating expenses, coordinating reporting, collaborating on issues like CARES Act and whatnot. But as a select board, we would like to spend some time thinking about other functions which we may find as a community the ability to share some service delivery, which would save us some money and also improve the service. The things that have been identified, in the past include the IT delivery, because both the municipal side and the school side has important information technology delivery that it has to accomplish. We have talked about in the past the fact that, basically we have a, $30 million business, $30 million plus with no HR function. So what we have really is people who are pinch hitting and enrolling people in programs and whatnot, but not planning the HR, the broader HR kinds of things. So buildings, maintenance, is there a way to look at that where we might consolidate some of that? And then there's the fields management, which has been both a combination of, where we, how we govern the fields, how we schedule the fields, how we do a better job overall of keeping the fields in playable condition. So those kinds of things are things that the select board is interested in doing some work on over the next few months. These really are things that are more geared toward FY22, but we don't start talking about them and create the dialogue around them at this point in time, then the budgetary clock will start running and we'll lose that opportunity. So that's some just general oversight we wanted to share with everyone tonight about what goals we've identified. That doesn't mean we're not responsible for continuing to do the day-to-day things and working on all the issues that we discussed this evening, but we wanted to share with the school committee and the finance committee as to some of our thoughts on areas and projects we might like to see get some attention as we move through this year and plan for next year. So happy to answer any questions. This is somewhat for information, but we wanted to make sure that, again, in the spirit of dialogue here, we let you know what we think we should be working on. And then, of course, invite the schools, some of the things that you'd like to share with us, some of the major things that it almost goes without saying. Maybe COVID is so overwhelming that it's COVID.
So, we're up to our eyeballs in COVID and don't expect that to let up anytime soon. Just from the beginning of the pandemic, it was just getting through our crisis learning last year and then getting ready for back to school, which happened today remotely. And now, now that we have school started, now we're trying to get the kids back into the building with hybrid. So, we've really just been sort of laser focused on that. And we'll continue to do that until, all of the kids are in the building safely, hopefully full time at some point next year.
Well, if there was ever a time I wouldn't want to be on a school committee, it's now.
It's been interesting, I can say that.
Sure it has. Well, hopefully, anything that we can do on the municipal side to support what's going on, we're more than, we're all interested in making sure that our children are getting what they need and in ways that they need. So good luck, folks.
Thank you. I mean, we're very lucky that the staff and teachers that we have are phenomenal, and we couldn't have gotten this far without them. So we're extremely lucky to have the group that we do.
All right, well, thank you very much. I guess the last item we wanted to just touch on briefly here, which again is taking us a little bit beyond, and maybe we don't get to determine this at this point. We should work sooner rather than later to develop, our budget calendar for fiscal year 22. We have tried hard to develop that calendar. In years gone by, unfortunately it's slipped a bit now and then. I'm hopeful that, particularly because of the consolidation of the finance function, we have the appropriate, support so that we're able to, meet some deadlines and get the budgetary information out to folks, and in particular the finance committee sooner, much more timely, in a more timely fashion, so that they can, we can do the reviews and whatnot, and the finance committee has the time that it needs to prepare for town meeting in the spring of 2021. But I'd be interested from my perspective anyway, in asking finance committee members and school committee members, what you see as ways to improve. We've had some conversation about department heads with sort of going to multiple meetings and saying the same thing to 3 different groups, and maybe that could be streamlined. I don't want to, maybe I should more appropriately start with the town administrator, if you'd like to say anything about this. But I would like, from my point of view, ask the members of this group to talk a little bit about, where we can, how we can make the budget process go as smoothly as possible, other than having a lot more money to spend. Mike, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is, yeah, we are endeavoring to provide information as early as possible, and we'll be developing the budget calendar and getting that out, hopefully to everyone by around Thanksgiving. And we certainly would like to hear the input of the members of the boards and committees that are so heavily involved in the process, to see how we can make your work a little easier and more efficient. And we will certainly try to do that. And I think if we can accomplish the goals with, maybe less repetition or less meetings, and if there are ways to do that, we are certainly open to working with all of you to make that happen. So that's really what I have to say at the moment.
So any other comments, nice to have, what we'd like to see, including, from the finance committee point of view?
Well, I would like us to basically work from the framework that we had worked with Bernie on, which, kind of provided a pretty good roadmap as to how to begin the process and work collaboratively on the budget, basically starting, December, January of putting together the priorities. Obviously, we're not going to have all the numbers, but there's a lot of foundational work that can be done in those early days, so that we're kind of all on the same page. We have the starting assumptions that we've kind of worked through together, probably in an early tri-board meeting as well, and then kind of go from there. I feel a lot of uncertainty as to what the next fiscal year will hold. I'm, just really grateful that it looks like this year, this fiscal year isn't as bad as we had feared, but I'm not convinced that there won't be a a Piper to pay in future years. So I think the amount of foundational work that we can do together saves us a lot of contention as we get down to hard numbers in later days.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, the more we can work together, the better off we are. And that doesn't mean we don't have legitimate different perspectives, but.
Right.
I don't have any concrete comments regarding what I necessarily like to see going forward, although I will think about that, you know, other than just saying the more consolidation and the higher level stuff that can get presented to the FinCom with, you know, Mike having the detail underneath, I think is helpful. You know, if we're looking at growth rates that are what they are, and we can try to control expenses to the extent that we can, you know, I think that a lot of the work that's been done the last couple of years in terms of the budget process, and in particular, the way it's been presented to the FinCom, has been an enormous leap forward from the way things were when I first joined the committee. So everybody that's had a hand in that, thank you. It's really hard when you're getting thrown, you know, things in a jumbled fashion and you're seeing the same thing 3 times because it wasn't complete the first time. And we all know how that goes. So I guess sort of a thank you for, you know, Jim's initiative and everybody that's put a lot of work in. Carol doing a great job with the presentation of things. And I will think about more concrete ways that I'd like to see things, you know, move forward.
Jim, I have 2 items, I guess, that come to mind when I'm thinking about it. The first one, I think the Finance Committee needs to see the final or as close to final recommended budget from the selectmen as soon as possible. Otherwise, we're listening to DPW present, police present, fire present, everybody present without knowing what the select board's planning to recommend, which confuses our position. Our position is supposed to be evaluate and recommend based on the select board's prepared budget. Yeah. If we're getting things, if we got people coming in and presenting something to us that is contrary to what you're thinking one way or the other, before you're ready to go and recommend to us a budget, that's confusing our job. Our job is not to prepare the budget, it's to evaluate the budget that the school committee and the select board prepare. And so instead of having committee or representatives from each of the town departments coming in and lobbying their ideas to the finance committee, we should be able to evaluate what you give us. And if we have questions, call them in to discuss the items that we may be concerned about. Mm-hmm. Is at least my take. I'm speaking for myself, not for the committee, but I think that that's what I'd like to see. And the second thing is, I'd like to get agreement around the funding formula. Last year we had the 4% increase funding formula, then COVID, so forget that. But this year, the school committee and the FinCom voted in favor of it. Select board chose not to implement it. I'd like to have that discussion again, and honestly have that discussion. We invited the select board to a meeting and the school committee to a meeting, and the select board didn't attend. We gave a lot more details at that meeting about the plan. And I know you and I have talked about it offline in the past. So I think that given it another fair hearing, whether it be at another tri-board meeting, and maybe that's the topic for our next tri-board meeting. So it's not the select board and the school committee attending a FinCom meeting, it's this meeting to discuss it. Because, you know, I think it does have merit. And I actually, assuming there aren't any major surprises, I mean, just doing the math, looking at the new growth is going to be higher and things are coming in. I think we're in a reasonable position for next year to be able to meet our funding needs at a reasonable growth rate of, you know, 4%. We could have done it this year. We're almost at it this year. We chose to cut, and prior to needing to cut. So I think that's a discussion to be had at our next meeting to try to get an agreement on that and get an honest agreement on it. So those are two items that come to my mind.
Well, let me just respond. You know, in terms of the process, I agree that, frankly, the creation of the unified budget document, which we did work on and everybody contributed to, and we ended up being able to get it executed because of the Community Compact grant from the Commonwealth. I think it's got us good documentation. I think the process in terms of that you're describing, which is, you know, sometimes let's just generously call it out of order.
Yeah.
But I think that results from the honest interest of the select board to try to get its act together, and the finance committee dealing with a deadline concern that they just you have to meet. So I certainly I think the select board are more than interested in doing that. And I think that, you know, we have talked about this funding formula, if you will, the select board, and we are committing ourselves, yes, to try and resolve it in a way that people can agree upon. I think we need to work on that. I think that, you know, there's some differences of opinion, but if we don't honestly debate them and put them on the table and then resolve them together, then we end up just going backwards. So I think we are interested as a board in working on that issue again as well.
Yeah. And we have the advantage the school does not have we don't have the elementary school, the high school, the sports, the bus drivers. Those groups don't come in to lobby the finance committee for their view of the budget. We do get a unified budget from the school, which just makes it a smoother process, at least in my opinion, to be able to look at the unified plan from our elected officials and recommend on it. So, but that can't happen unless we start getting information sooner. So yeah, I agree with you totally what you're saying, and I look forward to seeing it.
Well, yeah, that's why the calendar is important. I agree.
Yeah.
Other members of the board or school committee, or I don't want to, finance committee?
I just want to thank the the capital planning committee for all the work that they do that has been helpful in getting us to where we are in a more streamlined process. And you know, the more information that they have and the stronger recommendations that they can make kind of sooner will be helpful as well. I think having them putting in all of that good work really makes our job easier on the finance committee, and I'm sure from the select board as well, to consolidate all of those requests and just kind of streamline this process. So I really appreciate all the work that they put into this. And it gets us further down the road than we would be otherwise, for sure.
I agree with that, yes.
I'll just add that that's most of that work is done by Carol and John Barry.
I would echo that. Okay, well, I think that gets me dangerously close to when you wanted to do your wrap up at 9:25 Finance Committee. I don't know whether we had talked a little bit about back and forth about trying to schedule another meeting. Do we want to point toward a time? Does this group want to try to reconvene before the fall town meeting, or have we done enough at this point? And then you know, just try to schedule an early, perhaps in December, to start the work for FY22. I'm certainly open to people's point of view.
I would consider that, given the magnitude of the different issues that we're considering, it probably makes sense for us to meet in October. If free cash is going to be certified that first week of October, I would say, you know, that as soon as possible after that is certified is when I'd like us to meet. I know that it puts us close to when we have to make our recommendations, but you know, here we are mid-September, mid-October is only 4 weeks away. So if that's, you know, the 12th, which is a holiday, so that would put it probably the 14th.
I would say possibly if free cash is submitted. It does change periodically from what we submit, but at least we'd have a ballpark idea. And I think the most important discussion for this town meeting is what to do with the state aid that we have that's additional, the that was the beginning of the meeting, so I've forgotten, 236,000 or whatever it was that is available that needs to be reallocated. I think that's the piece that needs to have decision reached on it. The free cash piece, while if it's been submitted, we could have the number that was submitted, knowing that that could be, you know, less than that, but at least it puts a bracket around it. You know, I wouldn't spend up to Carol's limit, nor would we even spend up to the limit if it was certified at this town meeting, but it would give us an idea of where we stand.
That is
so
true.
I suggest even sooner in October, just to get this reallocation number agreed on. And it can be a single, you know, maybe 2 agenda item meeting, which would beat all records, Jim. And we could allocate the money and discuss the free cash position, knowing that it's not certified but has been submitted. And then an email can follow once it's certified to say, whoops, or good news, we're dead on.
So well, that would put us the first week of October.
Yeah, that's what I'm advocating for, in a long, roundabout way.
Well, we have the, you know, I guess, in terms of the numbers, there's 9 of you guys and 8 of us other committee people. So is it convenient for others to, you know, home in on the regular FinCom Wednesday, which is the 7th?
My only concern would be what comes out of this meeting might dictate what we have to do on our meetings, and getting.
We'll just stay late.
All right, 2 items on this committee's agenda, and then we move right into ours. There you go.
Yeah,
that's fine.
No, I'm fine with it. I honestly, I don't think it's as long a meeting as this because it's not policy discussion. It's not a lot of updates. It's resolving really 2 outstanding financial issues that once we get agreement on, we can proceed into the November town meeting recommendation process. Yeah, pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think if you all could join us on the 7th, I think that would make sense. And if we might not have a lot of other agenda items to discuss at that point. I don't know. So let's plan on that. And we're planning to meet the week before then on the 30th of September, not Halloween. So then we can kind of map out what we're going to be discussing in future meetings.
Well, the select board has 2 meetings before then, so hopefully we'll have made some progress. We're meeting on the 28th and the 5th. So how about from the school committee? Does it look like a reasonable opportunity that night, or?
Yeah, we should be able to. Most of us should be able to join. I can't speak for everyone.
I can't speak for everyone either.
I certainly can't.
Any board of selectmen member or select board member waving their hands, so I guess it's okay. Okay, well, why don't we just say then we'll meet, it's, which time do you want, folks? The 7 or the 7:30? Since the FinCom will have other business to attend to.
I could do 7.
7's fine.
I would prefer 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I prefer 7 myself.
Okay. All right, well, then we'll do that. All right, thank you all. At this point, what I'm going to do is I know the FinCom has other business to attend to. I'm going to ask for a motion by a member of the select board for us to adjourn the select board meeting.
I move that we adjourn the select board meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn the select board meeting for this evening. I'll poll the board. Mr. McCaffrey, yes. Mr. Germain?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
So the select board meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And I'll do the same for the school committee.
Carrie. I make a motion to adjourn the school committee meeting.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The school committee is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So for our FinCom, before we sign off, I'm going to postpone the payroll signatories and the committee organization for another night. We'll get to it. Just not tonight. So I just confirmed with Pete that he's gonna chair the September 30th meeting because I have a conflict. And then we will have our tri-board, they will join us on the 7th. And so if we keep that part fairly short, then we'll have agenda items after the tri-board that we can attend to. And so we can talk about the officers and payroll signatories. Does that make sense to you, Deirdre?
It does. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the payroll signatories. Is there, of the warrant articles that the town administrator spoke to, should I reach out to anyone to attend the September 30th meeting?
I would assume Mike and probably Carol.
I can speak to the capital planning issues or items with them.
And
Pete, should we invite the capital planning committee to that meeting on September 30th?
You can invite them. I will probably just tell John that if he needs some time off from meetings that I would speak to those items, but no harm. There's certainly no harm in inviting him in addition to Carol and Mike.
Yeah. And we'll probably want to know, kind of see a little more detail on the garage issue.
Right. So I'm sure Jim will be available. Okay.
How about the, is it the zoning committee, zoning board?
So I'm inviting Jim McKay to the meeting on which date were we talking?
September 30th.
Yeah, I want to make sure it's after the selectmen have made their vote, which it will be, so that's fine. Yeah, I just want to make sure that they've weighed in on it, so there's a final plan. Yeah. Yep,
that makes sense. And yeah, zoning, if they know what they're going to be recommending for the warrant at that point. They may not quite have everything together yet, but it'd be good to know kind of what's coming down. It might be a good time for them to share with us in that meeting. Our time is tight.
It will be. I was looking at the calendar, and if the meeting is on the 2nd, the final recommendations, I think it'll depend on whether it's the 7th or the 2nd.
Yeah.
To get the book.
I have to slide it unless there's another place to meet outdoors. You know, it sounds like that. Clyde Brown parking lot. It's beautiful. There's even electronic vehicle charging stations.
Yeah, it can be a challenge.
Yep. I think the landscaping messes up on that one, so you can't get clear sight lines.
And mobility as well. Yeah. All right. Any further issues that we need to discuss? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
To adjourn?
Move we adjourn. Yeah, second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Excuse me. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Next meeting, September 30th at 7.
Yeah.
7. Okay. Thank you, Deirdre.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.